LA musician The Dare is having a bit of an uprising recently. He is somebody who's starting to catch a bit of traction, had a mildly viral successful song with Girls, and also had the guest track with Charlie XCX, and of course Billie Eilish jumping on the remix, which ended up going to #1 in multiple countries. And kind of out of nowhere, he's just having this pretty big moment and seeming as though he may end up becoming this kind of like go-to producer type figure for that kind of like new rave throwback sound that takes us back to the 2000s, maybe even going further back to the 90s as well. He could be the next big thing when it comes to, you know, on-call producers to bring out a massive hit and then kind of fade away into obscurity once again. But before we ever get to that point, if we even do, he is out here making his own solo music. Now, I did catch wind of the EP quite a while ago, and there wasn't that much buzz or much talk about The Dare at that point. I just thought it was an EP worth trying, because I think I'd seen a few people mention it, but I keep closely up to date with music anyway, so I'm going to kind of catch on to those things. But at that point, there wasn't really this kind of like virality, there wasn't really this discourse surrounding The Dare, and I just thought the EP was pretty bad and didn't think anything of it and just assumed that would be it because nobody else was really talking about it that much. But as ever, the music industry is just so unpredictable. There's so many curveballs, and here we are basically quite some time later, and The Dare is a bit more of a talking point now, for better or for worse, because there's a lot of talk about this guy and discourse and the sleaziness behind the sound and the style of what he's doing. And I'm kind of on the side of the negative crowd because I'm with those people completely. Aside from the production on Guest, which I thought was pretty fun, I am really not feeling his solo work whatsoever. In fact, there are a couple of songs from that bloody EP that have made it onto this album, and yeah, I didn't like those, so spoiler alert, I don't really like this. I did intentionally mention at the start that he is LA based because, well, the album references New York in the title, and the overall sound is very much pulling from that like mid-2000s New York dance punk ravey sound that really flooded the indie scene and had all the indie bloggers raving about it at the time. And it's a really odd sound to be seen being brought back into the public eye in 2024. Like, we're getting nostalgic for 2000s music now, bro. What? Like I say, intentionally mentioning that he is from LA and there is a very clear New York influence coming through here, which is a little surprising. You would think that this was completely birthed out of that scene, and yet the guy, as far as I'm aware, doesn't really have that much affiliation with New York at all, aside from maybe just having such an appreciation for it and kind of wanting to bring a bit of nostalgia back through the lens of that and feeding it into his own music and maybe even bringing it into a bigger crowd now. Look, I'm not really against the idea of people picking and choosing different sounds. Music has always been that way. We've always had it as far back as the dawn of time. There's always been cultures being kind of preyed on for then other cultures to kind of popularize that sound, or maybe just want to do that sound because they like it and they're influenced by it. It's been a thing since the dawn of time, but I always feel like there's a very fine line between homage, appreciation, and just botching it. Like, there is a clear difference, and it's hard to really pinpoint where that line is, and it's hard to really understand why sometimes something doesn't work and something does. It is very difficult to really explain, and it's all subjective at the end of the day, because one person's cultural appropriation really could be somebody's genius. And I just feel like his style and trying to do this sound just feels completely like a rip-off and lacking in originality. I saw George Clinton recently live. He was fantastic. He brought an insane amount of rock star energy to the table that I just absolutely was floored by, because when you listen to his music, you wouldn't really be sat there thinking this guy is an absolute rock star on stage. but he is. And he is fantastic performing. And he actually said mid-show, because he had a few drinks, he was pretty drunk, he was just having a fun time, taking the mick really about how he has come to the UK and taken the Manchester baggy sound, because his most recent album, Urapayar, which is brilliant by the way, is very much pulling from that era of music. You know, the 90s baggy sound, right? Stone Roses, that kind of thing. It's very much influenced by that. Now, listening to that album, you can hear the influence, but my God, does it just sound like he is completely channeling his own energy into that influence and putting out music that feels so euphoric and so blissful and so individual, despite the fact that he is an American doing a sound from years ago that birthed out of a completely different country. He was joking when he was saying it, but you could easily interpret it as, oh, he is just ripping off that sound. But I just don't think he is. I think he's actually putting a purposeful and tasteful, like taking a purposeful and tasteful approach with his sound, with doing that album. And sometimes on the flip side, it can just end up sounding like this. It just sounds messy and crappy to me. Opening track, Open Up, just has this kind of messy instrumental that's trying to be a bit chaotic, trying to be a bit punky, trying to be a bit in your face, with these really obnoxious, ugly sounding vocals that sound really yelpy. And like I say, obnoxious is probably a word I'm going to keep coming back to, because the way he just presents his vocals just really rubs me the wrong way. And listening to the lyrics on top of that as well, that's the thing from this era of music he's so trying desperately to bring back. Lyrically, you know, not everything was incredible or the most genius thing you've ever seen written down, but like it was never sleazy or tacky or kind of like, questionable in the way that some of these are. Like the way he's like talking about like open up your legs and things, it's just so like, ugh. Look, I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt here and not throw out any kind of major claims, because he might just be like playing a character or playing up to the role that he's trying to present. But it's just like really not nice to listen to, because it's just the way his voice sounds. I mean, Good Time as well, again with those sleazy, icky lyrics. He's got this like creepy dude voice on this track as well, which I'm just not really a big fan of. A lot of talk about LCD's sound system in the reference to The Dare, which I think is very valid. But let's not forget there are some other influences coming through on this album, like The Rapture. Bro, The Rapture, that Echoes album, this song is just literally trying to be that completely. Like, I was so, like, taken back to those tracks from back in the day, you know, House of Jealous Lovers, and the title track Echoes, which ended up being the Misfits theme song. Fantastic songs, and this song was so, like, rubbing me the wrong way, because I was just like, it sounds like it's trying to do that but just not successfully doing it at all. Again, doesn't help that there's this creepy dude energy coming straight out of this album from front to back. But yeah, you can clearly see what he's trying to do with the sound. You've got Girls, which I didn't like when I first heard it. Didn't like it when it started to become a bit of a viral trend as well. And I still don't bloody like any of the lyrics on this song. I'm not having any of it taken out of context and trying to be like, ooh, look at this. Like, it just sounds annoying and boastful and just tacky in a way that I just don't like at all. Just kind of like depicting all these different types of girls he likes, and it's just like, nah. It has that early like Calvin Harris energy to it, which Calvin Harris, before he started becoming this big name DJ EDM producer, did have a bit of this wacky weird persona at the start of his career, which maybe non-Brits would be absolutely like unfamiliar with, which is fair enough, because I think those were just kind of successful songs, particularly in the UK. But again, maybe he's not pulling from that era directly, but I think there's probably a reason why Calvin Harris left that behind, because it kind of just sounded a bit nerdy and geeky and really dated on arrival, just like this all does to me. All this just sounds dated on arrival. You're Invited, the aforementioned LCD sound system is all over this track, just that sardonic energy, sarcastic nature with the kind of like self-aware sort of presentation with the you know, the lyrics and the way he's feeding through with his voice and stuff, again, makes me think that a lot of this album is kind of being a persona, which is why I don't want to be completely hating on the lyrics, because it could be very easily him just playing up to this character. This track makes it feel like very much that. But yeah, I just still don't like it, and I still feel like I'm just being transported to other bands that I'd much prefer to be listening to. I don't like to go way overboard with reference points in my reviews. I like to bring it up when it's relevant, but I don't want to spend so much of my review referencing other artists. But it's just so hard not to with this album, because it's like, wow, this guy is really, really trying so hard to be something else. I Destroyed Disco, again, got that sardonic nature to it. Just totally not funny though. Like, if it were funny, I'd maybe like at least crack a smile. But listening to him say like I Destroyed Disco over and over again on that hook in that robotic voice, oh, that sounds so ugly. Like, that is a really off-putting, turning off sound that I just don't want to hear again. Ugh, not for me. But yeah, just this punky kind of like rebellious energy coming through on this track too. Just sounds really goofy. I could maybe make a case for the track Movement, which has a bit more of like an electro clash sound to it, which I am at least, you know, not as annoyed listening to, because I actually think this track, it makes me feel like I'm about to enter a rave, more so than maybe some of the other tracks on this album, because the tracks previously to this one just annoy me, whereas this one I can at least kind of get behind the instrumental a little bit more. Maybe that's indicative of his overall potential in the future. Stick more to the production side of things, stick more to that kind of, you know, ravey sound, which you could maybe nail with production credits elsewhere. But yeah, like I say, with the obnoxious writing, the obnoxious singing, the goofiness of it all, the kind of lack of originality, I just can't get behind really many of the other songs other than this one. But even then, I'm kind of really, really reaching hard for something positive to say, because I'm not going to go back to this song anytime soon. As I said at the start, I think there's just a total fine line between, you know, cosplay, dressing up, and actually showing appreciation for something. And this, to me, is very much on the kind of cosplay dress up side. It doesn't sound like he's really showing much appreciation for it. It doesn't sound like he's putting his own unique spin on it. And we've had a pretty big conversation about this year that's been dominated with, you know, the Drake and Kendrick beef, where, like, you know, one of the reasons why people kind of were coming for Drake so hard was just the fact that it felt like he wasn't showing that appreciation, and he was playing dress up, and he was just kind of picking and choosing parts of different cultures and making them his own, putting on these fake accents, not really showing much love for it, and just doing it all for his self-gain really. And I'm not saying that Dare is on that level, but I think that conversation kind of enters this here, where it's like, you can just tell when somebody is doing something for that appreciation versus somebody doing something for just their own self-gain and lack of appreciation and just lack of originality. And I'm afraid to say the Dare for me falls way more on that negative side of the conversation, even if I'm not going to go as far as saying that he's literally going into cultures and preying on them and taking things. I'm not going as far as saying that. I think the Drake thing is a completely different level. But yeah, this to me just sounds like that in that sense, where it's just like, we've had this before, we had a good run with this sound. If you're going to bring it back, do it in a fun way, do it in an interesting way, and don't do it with these obnoxious lyrics and obnoxious vocals. Put your own personality into it without it sounding like a clear rip-off. 4 out of 10 for me. I think this is pretty bad, but let me know your thoughts in the comments. Would love to see what you guys think. Please let me know if you agree with me, disagree with me. Do subscribe if you haven't already as well. Have a good day. Check out my Patreon if you're feeling really generous and want to support me over on there. That would be wonderful. And yeah, tell me what I should review next. Have a good day. Goodbye.